Today I will tell you a story about a mysterious magical ball that will lead us to the home of the cosmic traveler Eartha and her Grenadar, and you will learn what happened to them after they left the abode of light, a cozy sanctuary in the vast expanses of the universe, where ancient stars shine brightly and where the large, friendly family of Aurorite dragons lives. But first, let me remind you what the legend of the dragons of light and darkness was about. Once upon a time, long ago, there were no stars, just darkness and woe. Black Obsidraki dragons slept in silent darkness, where shadows crept. But little dragons stayed awake, chasing meteors in the endless space. They sucked on cosmic ice like sweets, in games where joy and freedom meet. But as they grew, they lost their zest, without much joy, without much rest. They played their games with all their might, until sleep overtook them at night. One day, Tosha swallowed a blue-green stone, a meteor no one had tried to own. And in a flash, he began to glow, from black to bright, a vibrant show. The dragons gasped, surprised and wowed by the miracle they just saw. Dasha, Tosha's daring friend, quickly seized the orange blend. She swallowed the meteor with a smile, her skin lit up in a glowing style. Like a goddess born from a shining dream, her beauty made Tosha's eyes gleam. The young dragons scattered far and wide, to catch the meteors, full of pride. They colored themselves in shades so bright, the universe shone with newfound light. When the joy had finally ceased, they called themselves Aurorite beasts. But an old dragon growled with a frown, in anger, his voice thundered down, "Let the light vanish, let darkness rise. Return the night to quiet skies. We'll surprise the Aurorite crew, by crafting a black hole anew. I know for certain, soon they'll see, the light will die, and darkness will be." But brave Tosha did not back down, lying here, doing nothing, we'll drown. The Obsidraki can't make us afraid, they only dream of the light they betrayed. We'll forge the stars, we'll build them bright, their glow will forever defeat the night. Though the Obsidraki fought and tried, with the eternal dark, they said goodbye. Tosha and Dasha worked through the years, through joys and triumphs, through trials and fears. They built the stars with love and might, so we could gaze at their beautiful light. Each child of theirs, like a gemstone rare, had talents unique, beyond compare. Vitaliera, their daughter, flew far and wide, breathing life into planets with joy and pride. Grenadar, her brother, strong and wise, with silver wings, patrolled the skies. He kept the order across the stars, and judged the wrongdoers from afar. One day, a ship in space did roam, but the hooligans claimed it as their own. Grenadar saved both ship and Eartha, and love for her began to stem. Grenadar and Eartha dreamed of life as one, but knew their paths had just begun. She lived on Earth, bound by her land, while Grenadar ruled the stars so grand. He was too big, couldn't fit in her place, a mighty dragon in cosmic space. He sought his sister's help and grace, and shared his problem face to face. Vitaliera made a plan so grand, and offered him a gift at hand. "I'll make a ring for you to wear, a gift to answer your love's prayer. When you wish to be a man, just put it on, and there you stand. And when you're called back to the skies, take it off, and once again rise." Zem sat alone, with a tear in her eye, missing her love, watching the sky. Suddenly, there was a knock at her door. She opened it wide and gasped in awe. A man stood before her, tall and bright, but in his eyes, she saw the light. "Grenadar," she whispered, heart full of bliss. "My love, it's me," he said with a kiss. So, are you curious to know what kind of magical ball this is? Of course, you are. Well then, listen. It was a beautiful summer day. Loretta was swinging on the playground with her friends. They were excitedly discussing their upcoming first day of school. The very first day of first grade. "Loretta," her father called out. He had just returned from work and beckoned her with a gesture. The girl jumped off the swing and ran to him. Come inside. I have something interesting for you, he said. They went inside, and her father placed an unusual, almost weightless, glowing tennis ball in her hand. One of my students gave it to me, he explained. Loretta held the ball, captivated by its faint glow. It seemed fragile, yet indestructible. She squeezed it tightly in her hand. It gave way like soft clay, but as soon as she released it, it immediately returned to its original shape. What a strange ball, Loretta whispered. She threw the ball, expecting it to fall and bounce like a regular tennis ball. But her eyes widened as the ball moved in slow motion, like a balloon, as if time had stretched around it. She held her breath, and her heart started to race. What is this? What is it made of, Dad? She asked quietly. He shrugged. Some kind of experimental material. Maybe for spaceships. They're always coming up with something new. Intrigued, Loretta threw the ball toward the wall again. It slowly floated toward the wall, gently touched it, and slowly bounced back toward Loretta's hands. The ball's movements were unnatural, and with each throw, Loretta's curiosity grew. There was something strange, maybe even magical, about this ball. That night, Loretta took the ball to bed, pressing it to her cheek. Its warmth gave her comfort and a sense of mystery that wouldn't let her rest. As she drifted off to sleep, she could have sworn the ball moved in her hand, as if it were alive. But sleep overtook her. The next morning, the ball was no longer in her bed. Loretta found it perfectly camouflaged among the wooden floorboards. Her heart raced. It hadn't just fallen, it had hidden itself. Dad, come here. Quick, she called, not knowing what to think. Her father picked up the ball and tossed it to her, but as it flew through the air, Loretta froze. The ball transformed, its wooden texture dissolving into a soft shimmering light. It landed in her hand, sparkling as usual. Her curiosity sparked a desire to conduct various experiments with the ball. Loretta tried to stretch it, held it over a fire, and submerged it in water. Nothing affected the ball. It remained completely unharmed. What are you? Loretta whispered. Loretta didn't part with the ball all day and took it with her to bed again before sleep, holding it tightly in her hands. As she drifted off, she felt its softness, which gave her a sense of comfort. Somehow, it felt like there was a friend beside her, providing a sense of security. Loretta didn't understand why, but in some way, she wasn't afraid of it. Suddenly, in the middle of the night, Loretta woke up, disturbed by something or someone. She opened her eyes and glanced at the ball, which she was still holding in her palms. The ball was no longer glowing. She realized that in her hands was something that looked like a shapeless lump of clay, squished between her palms. It had taken on the color of her skin. When Loretta opened her hands, it moved like a little creature, forming a cute little mouth that opened in a sweet yawn, then closed into an adorable childlike smile. Loretta screamed in panic and threw it across the room. Her father burst into the room. What happened? Loretta looked at where it had fallen and saw the same glowing ball shining in the dark. I had a nightmare, she stammered in response. Her father kissed her forehead, calmed her down, and left the room. Wrapped in a blanket, Loretta stared at the ball. It now lay motionless, harmless, in the morning light, but she couldn't shake the feeling that it was watching her just as she was watching it. Who are you? The girl whispered. You won't hurt me if I hold you again, will you? But the ball stayed still on the floor. It didn't seem threatening at all, yet Loretta couldn't get rid of the unease, although her curiosity wouldn't leave her either. So, you turn into what you're lying on, right? She whispered to the ball. What if I put you in my mouth? Will you turn into my tongue? She giggled at the thought. Or maybe you'll turn into my lips and tell me who you are. She thought with a smile but decided not to test her theory. The ball remained silent and motionless. I'll hold you forever, she whispered. You'll turn into a little fist and be my little friend, she dreamed, falling asleep again. And you, friend, what would you do if you got such a ball? This is what Loretta did. In the morning, Loretta quickly found the ball. It lay in the same spot, but its color had changed again, resembling the hardwood floor. Without hesitation, Loretta slipped it into her pocket. At breakfast, there was a knock at the door. Her father opened it, and from the hallway, she heard, "Hello, Nikolai. Come in, have some tea with us. My wife baked such delicious cookies. You'll lick your fingers clean." Nikolai came into the kitchen, his face showing concern. "Grisha, I have a problem," he said quietly. "Something happened with your son?" asked Loretta's father. "No, he's fine. Yesterday, he gave you the ball. I brought it home from work to show him. I thought it was just a toy. But I was wrong. I need to return it." Without hesitation, Loretta's father turned to his daughter. "Loretta, bring the ball I gave you to play with yesterday. It needs to be returned." Loretta's heart pounded. She didn't want to part with her new toy. All right, she stammered and went to her room. Her father and Nikolai sat at the table, and Loretta's mother poured them tea and offered some sweets. After standing behind the door for a while, Loretta returned to the kitchen. "Dad, I don't know where it is. It was on the floor, but now it's gone," she lied, her mind racing with the question, "Where should I hide it?" Loretta wandered around the kitchen, pretending to look for the ball. Glancing at the teapot on the stove, she quickly transferred the ball from her pocket into the teapot, hoping no one would look there. "Loretta, have you found the ball?" her father asked again. Loretta froze. "Not yet," she replied. Her father laughed. "Nikolai, it's an amazing ball. It camouflages better than a chameleon. But don't worry, we'll definitely find it and return it." Nikolai's face darkened. Loretta's father asked, "Will you be in big trouble if we don't find it?" Nikolai sighed. "Well, as long as no one finds out I took it, everything will be fine. Otherwise, I might lose my job." "Don't worry," Loretta's father reassured him. "We won't tell anyone. But I'm sure we'll find it." Nikolai left. "Loretta, come here," her mother called her for breakfast. "I baked your favorite cookies." Loretta sat down to eat with pleasure, thinking about how she had outsmarted everyone. She was still at the table when her father came into the kitchen again. "Loretta," he said, looking intently into her eyes, "last night when you woke up, the ball was lying in the corner of your room. Now it's not there. Did you move it?" "No," she mumbled, chewing on a cookie. And suddenly, Loretta remembered that her mother had poured water for her from the teapot after she had placed the ball inside it. And her cup was already empty. Her eyes widened in horror as the thought struck her. Her father saw the expression on her face and got scared for her. "My dear, don't worry. That ball is strange. It's not your fault it disappeared." Loretta lowered her eyes and nodded, thinking only about checking the teapot. Her father went off to search for the ball around the house, while Loretta slowly stood up and walked toward the stove. She looked inside the teapot. It was empty. "I drank the ball," she thought in horror. Dear friend, what would you think if you were in such a situation? It's hard to imagine. Here's what happened to Loretta. Loretta was afraid to confess her lie. Fear gripped her chest, and her thoughts raced with anxiety. She desperately needed to talk to someone about what had happened, but the words seemed stuck in her throat. She wasn't most afraid of punishment. She feared that doctors might cut her open to search for the ball. What if they found the ball inside me? Would they put me under bright hospital lights, asking me questions I couldn't answer? And what if they didn't find it? What would they think? That I made it all up? She wasn't even sure if she had actually swallowed it. Maybe it disappeared from the teapot, evaporated or flew away. But the tea did taste a little different. Or maybe that was just her imagination. "Mom," Loretta asked cautiously, her palms sweaty with fear, "did you add honey to my tea?" Her mother looked up at her in surprise. "No. We're out of honey. Why do you ask?" Loretta's insides froze with fear. "It seemed to me that the tea was sweeter than usual," Loretta squeezed out. Her mother smiled, unaware of the turmoil inside her daughter. "It's just your imagination. Probably because the cookies were so sweet." Loretta forced a smile, but the fear wouldn't let go of her. Vivid images of doctors and hospital beds flashed in her mind. "They will definitely cut me open." Afraid that her mother would notice the sudden rush of panic, Loretta left for her room, trying to chase away the terrifying thoughts. "I won't tell anyone," Loretta swore to herself. Days passed, and to her surprise, nothing happened. Loretta didn't notice any changes. Eventually, the fear subsided. Soon, Loretta started thinking that nothing had happened, and the ball had likely flown away, unnoticed by anyone. Before the start of the school year, memories of the mysterious ball rarely crossed her mind, although deep down, the secret lingered, as if waiting to resurface. On the morning before the first day of school, Loretta woke up with butterflies in her stomach. Tomorrow is the big day, she thought, feeling both excited and a little nervous. She quickly got dressed, scarfed down her breakfast, and ran outside to meet her friends. The thought of school pushed aside the familiar unease about the secret that still hadn't been forgotten. She was halfway to the playground when she saw Nikolai walking toward her house. Her heart sank. What does he want? Loretta thought irritably, slowing her steps. Nikolai was the last person she wanted to see. He knocked on the door. Her mother peeked out from the open door and warmly greeted him. What are they talking about? Loretta wondered with fear. She tensed up and became all ears. But she couldn't hear anything. Frustration and desperation filled her. As Loretta strained to hear the conversation, a dizzying sensation crept over her. Her surroundings seemed to swell, the air thickened, and her feet. They didn't quite touch the ground anymore. She blinked, and suddenly the world expanded, and she was shrinking? No flying. At once, Loretta heard every word spoken by her mother and Nikolai as if she were watching them from above and standing right beside them. "He left for work after breakfast," her mother said. "Maybe I can help you with something?" Nikolai replied with concern, "I just came to ask if the ball has been found." Loretta froze, her pulse quickened. "Not this," she thought hopelessly. "I don't know," her mother replied. "I'll ask Loretta now." Her mother glanced toward the playground, but she didn't see Loretta. "That's strange, I just saw her," she muttered in confusion. "Loretta," her mother called loudly. "Girls, have you seen Loretta?" "I saw her heading this way, but then she disappeared," one of the girls replied. Loretta blinked in confusion. "How could I have disappeared? I'm right here." She looked around and realized she was standing close to the house, but how she had gotten there, she didn't understand. Her mother turned around, looked right at her, and called her name again. "Loretta! I'm here." "Mom!" Loretta answered, but she didn't hear her own voice. Instead, a strange buzzing sound escaped her. Loretta looked down and gasped in horror. She was no longer Loretta. She was a dragonfly, hovering in the air, her wings fluttering rapidly. This can't be happening. Panic washed over her. But slowly, she descended to the ground, watching, mesmerized, as her fragile wings slowed their frantic fluttering. Her body quivered and stretched, pulling her back into her human self. The tinkle of magic rippled through her skin, as if every fiber of her being had been momentarily untethered from reality and was now stitching itself back together. Her mother, who had been searching frantically for her daughter, suddenly spotted Loretta and rushed toward her. "Where were you?" "I've been calling you," she said, her voice shaking with worry. Loretta swallowed hard, her heart racing. "I'm here, Mom," she croaked softly. Her mother placed a hand on her forehead. "What's wrong with you, my girl? You're so pale and sweaty. Are you feeling okay?" "I'm just tired," Loretta replied, the memory of her transformation still fresh and frightening. "I want to lie down." "Of course," her mother said with concern. "Sweetheart, Uncle Collier is asking if you found the ball?" Loretta shook her head, feeling as if a stone was lodged in her throat. "No, I haven't found it," she said quickly, almost too quickly. "And no," she added, a little quieter, "I haven't told anyone." Nikolai sighed in relief. "Good. Please don't tell anyone. I'll be in big trouble if anyone finds out. Do you promise?" "Yes," Loretta said. "I promise," she added dryly. Nikolai gave a weak smile and left. Loretta watched him leave, and the weight of her secret pressed heavily on her chest. Back in her room, Loretta lay down on her bed and closed her eyes. The recent incident flashed through her mind like a horror movie. It wasn't a dream, the girl thought. Mom couldn't see me, and then suddenly she did. I was a dragonfly. But how? She looked at her reflection in the mirror. Nothing seemed unusual, she was the same. Her thoughts drifted back to Nikolai's conversation with her mother. Loretta remembered everything that had happened step by step. She was far away from them and wanted to hear what they were saying. Then something strange happened. She suddenly found herself close to them and saw them from above. I was really a dragonfly. And then I changed back. It must be the ball, Loretta thought. Ever since I touched it, strange things have been happening. Could it have given me this power? If it could turn me into a dragonfly, what else could it do? Am I still me, she wondered, staring at her reflection. She looked the same, but the girl in the mirror felt different. What if I'm not human anymore? A shiver ran down her spine. But then again, what if this makes me something more? Loretta had many questions and no answers. Suddenly, a soft voice echoed in her mind. It wasn't her voice, nor her thoughts. It was something entirely new, something that felt both foreign and familiar. "Don't be afraid," the voice said gently, soothing her like a lullaby. Loretta's heart pounded. Who are you?" she thought, her mind racing. "I am part of you now," the voice replied, calm and steady, yet powerful. "Are you the ball?" she asked, her entire body trembling with both fear and curiosity. "Yes," the voice said. "My name is Celeste. Don't worry. Nothing bad will happen to you. I won't hurt you, I promise." Loretta's mind whirled. Part of me? She wanted to distrust him, but deep inside, an odd comfort settled in. Celeste's voice didn't make her feel alone. It made her feel like she had a companion, a friend she could trust with her secret. "Celeste," she whispered, "why is Uncle Collier so scared of losing you?" "I'll answer all your questions," Celeste reassured her. "But you must keep this a secret." "I promise," Loretta said, her voice more certain now. "I know you can keep a secret," Celeste continued. "I've already seen that." Loretta's pulse quickened as Celeste began his tale. "I came to Earth from a galaxy far beyond yours. Our planet was silent for eons, until Vitaliera, the mother of life, visited us. Vitaliera is a radiant cosmic dragon, known for breathing life into planets. She was almost done creating intelligent beings on our world when the Obsidraki, brutal dragons, attacked. They tore her wings, and she fell, stranded on our planet. Only one dragon can help her now, her brother Grenadar, the wisest and most powerful dragon in the universe. But Vitaliera had no way to reach him. She needed someone smart, invisible, and capable of crossing the universe unnoticed. That's why she made me." Celeste's voice softened, becoming more intimate. "I can travel undetected, I can camouflage myself, and I cannot be destroyed. I am nimble and eternal." Loretta's eyes widened. "But why are you here? On Earth?" "I followed Grenadar here. Vitaliera believed that humans were kind. Once, she met a good girl, and she thought all humans were the same. But people can be different. I tried to seek help, but instead, they wanted to use me to harm others. That wasn't my mission. That's how I ended up with you." Loretta's lips curled into a nervous smile. "And then I swallowed you," she said, trying to hide her excitement, realizing now that this strange ball had given her powers beyond her wildest dreams. Celeste chuckled softly. "Don't worry. To be honest, you put me in the teapot because I made you." Loretta's eyes widened. "That's not true. You didn't say anything to me." "I didn't have to. I simply wanted it, and you did it. But don't be mad at me. If it weren't for me, you wouldn't have hidden me from your father. You've never done something like that before, have you?" Loretta hesitated, then lied. "Never. You see, you have nothing to feel guilty about. Just help me do a good deed, and I promise, you'll never regret it." "But I'm just a little girl." Loretta protested, a bit overwhelmed. "You are," Celeste agreed gently, "but you have me, a powerful friend who will protect you. I can travel through space, but Earth's atmosphere slows me down. I need your help to find Grenadar faster. Will you help me?" Loretta's heart raced. "Of course. But he's a dragon, right? There are no dragons here." "He's not just any dragon. He's a cosmic dragon, and the brother of the Mother of Life. She gave him the power to take human form." "Like the power you gave me to turn into a dragonfly?" Loretta asked excitedly. "Yes, exactly. And I know he's here. Together, we'll find him." "And would you want to have such a powerful companion living inside you, who could do whatever they pleased with you? After all, this isn't just some kind of infection you can get rid of with pills. You'd be lucky if it truly had good intentions. But what if it's deceiving you, just like Loretta?" Well, listen to what happened next. It was a crisp, sunny autumn day, and Loretta's heart raced with excitement. It was her very first day of first grade. The night before, she had tossed and turned in bed, her mind buzzing with nervous anticipation. But despite the lack of sleep, she awoke much earlier than usual, her stomach fluttering with excitement. As Loretta entered the classroom with a group of other children, she paused near the door, her eyes scanning the room. Many of the kids already seemed to know one another, giggling and chatting as they quickly filled the desks at the back of the room. Loretta's excitement faltered. She didn't recognize a single face. For a moment, she stood there, feeling small and unsure of where to go. Only a few desks remained empty. Loretta glanced around, her gaze falling on a boy standing next to her. He looked just as uncertain as she did. Their eyes met, and in that instant, Loretta felt a wave of relief. She wasn't alone after all. "We can sit together," she suggested, pointing to one of the empty desks nearby. The boy's face brightened with a shy smile, and he nodded. "I'm Loretta. What's your name?" "Anton, but everyone calls me Tosha," he said with a cheerful grin. Tosha was smaller than most of the other kids, even shorter than Loretta. His large, round glasses perched precariously on his nose, almost swallowing his face, while his wild red curls bounced as if they had a life of their own. As the day wore on, Loretta noticed that Tosha would occasionally glance at her, his expression filled with wonder, almost as if he saw something magical in her. She also observed that Tosha didn't seem to be paying much attention to the teacher. Instead, he had a book tucked into his lap, and he seemed lost in its pages. Yet whenever the teacher asked a question, Tosha always knew the answer, as if by magic. By the end of the day, Loretta's curiosity got the better of her. As they packed their books, she finally spoke up. "Tosha, you're really interesting," she said, her voice filled with curiosity. "You don't seem to be listening in class, but you always know the right answers. How do you do that?" Tosha shrugged, his cheeks flushing as he smiled shyly. "I just read really fast. I already read all these books a long time ago. There wasn't anything new for me today, so I got bored. To stay awake, I read something new." Loretta's eyes widened in amazement. "Wow! That's incredible, Tosha. You're really special." Tosha blushed deeper, his unruly curls tumbling over his face to hide his embarrassment. "I'm not special," he mumbled, his voice barely above a whisper. "But you are. You're magical." Loretta blinked, caught off guard by his words. "Me? No way. I'm just ordinary. What makes me special?" Tosha hesitated, his gaze soft but serious as he looked directly at her. You shine, Loretta. I don't know how to explain it, but it's like you have this glow. You're different. Like a sorceress or something. I've never seen anyone like you." Loretta stared down at her hands, half expecting to see something magical. But they looked the same as always. "Oh, stop it. I'm not shining. I'm not a Christmas tree," she joked, trying to laugh off the strange compliment. But deep down, his words stirred something inside her. Her heart fluttered, and her pulse quickened, just a little. Tosha shook his head, a small, knowing smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "No, you're not a Christmas tree. But you're special. I can see it." Tosha's words touched Loretta's heart deeply. No one had ever told her anything like that before. For the first time, someone, Tosha, had seen something in her that no one else had noticed. Loretta smiled, feeling a warm glow spread inside her. It was as if his words had lit a small flame within her, one that filled her with a new sense of possibility. Could she really be special? But before she could fully savor that warmth, Celeste's voice interrupted her thoughts, like a whisper in the back of her mind. "That boy will lead us to Grenadar," Celeste said. "Most likely, Grenadar is his father. We need to go to his house. Today." Loretta's heart skipped a beat. "Really?" she asked silently. "How do you know?" "He sees what others can't. He sees your glow. And only Grenadar, or someone from his family, can see that glow," Celeste explained calmly. Loretta looked at Tosha again, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She couldn't see her own glow, she was just an ordinary girl, after all. But Tosha saw it. Maybe, just maybe, she really was glowing. "Why am I glowing?" Loretta asked Celeste, feeling a twinge of wonder and fear. "Because I'm searching for Grenadar," Celeste replied smoothly. "And as soon as he sees you, he'll know someone is looking for him." Loretta and Tosha sat together on the school bus, chatting about little things, school, books, anything to pass the time. As they rode, the steady hum of the engine and the gentle swaying of the bus seemed to lull Tosha into a relaxed state. The ride felt longer than usual, almost dreamlike. But Loretta remained alert, her thoughts still spinning. She pretended not to notice when they passed her stop. Suddenly, mocking voices came from the back seat, breaking the peaceful mood. "Bride and groom, tee-hee-hee." Loretta turned, her face flushing with embarrassment as she realized they were the target of the teasing. She quickly averted her gaze, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. Tosha, too, seemed to shrink, lowering his eyes in silent shame. "Don't pay attention to those fools," Loretta said quietly, but her voice had a sharp edge to it. Tosha nodded, though his expression remained downcast. But the boys continued their taunts, laughing and jeering. Loretta's anger flared, hot and sudden, like a fire she couldn't control. Without thinking, she felt her body change. In an instant, she had transformed into a bee. She buzzed toward the nearest bully, stinging him sharply in the ear, then darted back to her seat, shifting back to her human form in a flash. Tosha stared at her, his eyes wide with confusion and disbelief. "Loretta," he stammered, "what? What just happened?" She glanced at him with an innocent expression, as if nothing unusual had occurred. "What do you mean?" she asked, her tone casual. "I don't know," Tosha said, still reeling. "You were here. Then you weren't. It was like you vanished and came back, like a ghost or something." Loretta let out a light laugh. "Oh, Tosha, there must be something wrong with your eyes. Maybe you need to see a doctor." Tosha frowned, still confused, but he managed a weak smile. "Yeah, you're probably right. Maybe I need new glasses. Oh, this is my stop." He stood up suddenly, nearly missing his stop. Loretta blinked and looked out the window. "Oh no, I missed my stop." "Well done, Loretta," Celeste's voice purred in her mind, filled with satisfaction. Tosha smiled. "Don't worry. Come to my house. You can call your parents from there, and they'll pick you up later." "All right," Loretta replied, though the thought of calling her parents barely registered. A different feeling had taken hold of her, a growing thirst for adventure, something new, something thrilling. They reached Tosha's house, and as they approached the front door, it creaked open. Tosha's father stepped outside, stopping in his tracks as he looked at the children. He exuded strength and authority, a stark contrast to the gentle, shy nature of his son. "Dad, this is Loretta," Tosha said, excitement tingling in his voice. "We sit together in class. She's really kinda nice." His father's intense gaze met Loretta's, sharp and penetrating. There was something unsettling about his presence. "What's going on?" he asked quietly, his voice low but filled with unshakable resolve. Loretta's breath caught in her throat. Her heart raced, her body suddenly stiff with a strange excitement she didn't fully understand. She couldn't look away from the man's eyes. But amid her fear, she felt Celeste's presence in her mind, his calm energy grounding her. She clung to it, using it to steady herself. Suddenly, the world around her slowed. The wind seemed to stop mid-breath, birds' wings moved in slow motion, and then they froze completely. Time itself halted. A knot of fear twisted in her stomach, but along with it came a rush of exhilaration. Something monumental was happening, and she was right in the middle of it. Loretta blinked, hardly believing what she saw. A shimmering, translucent ball appeared on the tip of her finger. This was no longer a game, it was real magic. The weight of the moment pressed down on her, both terrifying and awe-inspiring. Celeste's voice pierced the stillness, calm but commanding. "Grenadar. My name is Celeste. I was sent by Vitaliera. She is in danger and needs your help urgently." Grenadar. The name echoed in Loretta's mind. Celeste had mentioned him many times, but only now did the full gravity of who he was sink in. Grenadar wasn't just anyone, he was something far more majestic, powerful, and crucial than she had ever imagined. Loretta glanced at Tosha, her heart thudding in her chest. Did he understand? Did he know the significance of this moment? Tosha's usual shyness was replaced by a look of pure shock. His hands trembled as he took a step back, glancing from his father to Loretta, eyes wide with confusion. What's happening?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. His eyes darted wildly, searching for something familiar in the midst of this surreal moment. Loretta's heart ached for him. It was clear that Tosha had no idea who his father really was. He was scared, lost in a reality he couldn't comprehend. "Tosha," she started softly, but words failed her. How could she explain something she barely understood herself? Tosha's father, however, seemed unfazed by the magic unfolding. He nodded gravely at Celeste's words. "Thank you, Celeste. Tell my wife I will return soon. Take care of her and my son." "Don't worry," Celeste replied. Before Loretta could process what was happening, something in Tosha snapped. His confusion morphed into anger. His red curls seemed to bristle, standing on end like porcupine quills. He straightened, growing taller, his expression hardening. "What do you mean, soon return? Where are you going?" Tosha's voice cracked, and his fists clenched at his sides. The timid boy Loretta had spent the day with was gone. In his place was someone filled with fire, someone demanding answers. "Son," his father's voice softened, a brief flicker of pride in his eyes. "I see that you've grown. I'm sorry I didn't notice earlier. But trust me, I have a serious reason for leaving." His tone was gentle but firm, as if he were speaking to someone far older than Tosha. "From now on, you'll need to grow up quickly. I'll explain everything when I return. For now, your mother will tell you the stories you need to know. You'll learn about the life you are destined to be a part of." Before Tosha could protest, the air around his father shimmered, and in an instant, he was no longer a man. His body expanded and stretched, his skin transforming into glimmering scales. Wings, vast and silver like giant sails, unfurled with a sound like rushing wind. Grenadar had become a massive, majestic dragon. Tosha stumbled backward, his face a mixture of awe and terror. Loretta stood frozen, her breath caught in her throat, as if the sheer majesty of Grenadar had stolen the air from her lungs. With a mighty flap of his wings, Grenadar ascended into the sky, disappearing into the clouds in seconds. The world around them held its breath, as if the very earth itself was protecting this secret. At that moment, Tosha's mother appeared, her bright blue eyes brimming with warmth and energy. "Tosha, you're home. I've missed you," she said, her voice bright with joy. But her smile faded quickly when she saw the expressions on her son's face and on the unfamiliar girl standing beside him. "What's going on, Tosha? And where's your father? I just saw him at the door." Before Tosha could respond, his mother turned to Loretta. "And who is this lovely stranger? A friend? How sweet. Come inside, both of you," she said, her tone cheerful yet firm, as she led them into the house. As they entered, Loretta discreetly watched Tosha. He seemed calmer now, but his usual shyness was absent. His eyes still held a shadow of the strange events that had just unfolded, and he remained silent, weighed down by thoughts that clearly troubled him. His mother's voice broke the silence, more serious now. "Do your parents know you're here?" she asked Loretta, who shook her head. "Then we'd better call them." Loretta dialed her parents' number, and Tosha's mother spoke cheerfully over the phone. "Don't worry," she assured them, her voice light. "I'll make sure they do their homework and bring her home later. It seems they've become good friends. You have a wonderful girl." After hanging up, her tone shifted as she turned to face the children. "Now, tell me, what happened?" Tosha's lips trembled as he struggled to find the words. "Mom, Dad," his voice cracked, and he couldn't finish. His shoulders slumped, and he looked away, his eyes brimming with unshed tears. His mother's expression softened, concern filling her eyes. Tosha glanced at her, his face full of confusion and disbelief. "They've been hiding something from me," he thought bitterly, furrowing his brows. Sensing her son's turmoil, Tosha's mother turned to Loretta, her tone now more insistent. "What happened?" Before Loretta could speak, the familiar, calming voice of Celeste filled the room, explaining everything in a measured, soothing tone. The reassurance in Celeste's words allowed Loretta to relax, her fear easing in the warmth of his presence. Tosha's mother remained composed, listening intently. She nodded slowly, absorbing the gravity of what Celeste was telling her. "Thank you, Celeste," she said softly. He usually lets me know when he needs to leave for cosmic matters, but I understand why he left so suddenly. Don't worry, I'm sure he'll be back soon and tell us all about how he dealt with those bullies." With a sudden burst of energy, she turned back to the children. "How about dinner? And after, I'll tell you about my own cosmic adventures." Later that evening, Tosha's mother sat with him by the fireplace, recounting the story of her love with Grenadar. "My cosmic journey brought me to a remarkable family of dragons, the great guardians of the universe. They were as big as mountains, and I was like a tiny ladybug to them. At first, it was terrifying. But after I spoke with Grenadar, I realized that behind his incredible strength and intellect, he had the kindest, most gentle soul. We became close friends. Not only did he save me from certain death, but he also helped me return home to Earth. The distance I traveled in space over 5 long years, I covered back in just one day, thanks to my loyal friend. Grenadar settled on the moon to watch over me. But he got lonely there without me, as I could only visit him on rare occasions. I couldn't live on the moon, and he couldn't live on Earth. He was far too big for humans. Over time, we realized we couldn't live apart. One day, Grenadar proposed to me. I would love to, I said, but how? We come from different worlds. He smiled and said, leave that to me, and then flew away without another word. Days turned into weeks, and I waited, not knowing what he was planning. I have a cosmic ring, given to me by Grenadar's mother, that allows me to communicate with anyone, anywhere. I called him many times, but he didn't answer. I began to worry, though I knew he was the strongest, most capable dragon in the universe. Then one evening, there was a knock at the door. My heart skipped a beat. I didn't know why, but I felt something good was coming. I opened the door and saw him. My Grenadar. I knew it was him, even though he had taken human form. He was tall, handsome, with silvery hair just like his dragon scales. His eyes still shone with that silvery light, and his voice, though quieter, was unmistakably his. I melted in his arms, and our life together began. And then you were born, my dear son. I didn't know if you'd be a little dragon or a human, but your father assured me you'd be human, though not an ordinary one. What you will become, your father will tell you when he returns." "Mom, how did Dad become human?" Tosha asked, his curiosity piqued. His mother smiled gently. "His sister, Vitaliera, is a master and a dreamer," she began. "She travels across the universe, creating life on different planets. Your father is her favorite brother, and when he asked for her help, she didn't hesitate. She's the one who created all the life you see on our planet, the people, the animals, the birds, the fish, and even the tiniest insects. Only she had the knowledge and power to help your dad. At first, she gave him a special ring," she continued, "a ring that allowed him to turn into a human when he wore it. And when he took it off, he would turn back into a dragon. But later, she created an elixir that gave him the ability to transform into either a dragon or a human whenever he chose." "Why did she make an elixir if the ring already worked?" Tosha asked, frowning in thought. His mother's smile softened. "Because one day, your dad lost the ring. He couldn't return to me for a very long time until Vitaliera made the elixir, giving him control over his form without needing the ring." Tosha's eyes widened with excitement. "Mom, does that mean my grandparents are dragons?" he exclaimed, barely able to contain his enthusiasm. His mother pulled him into a warm hug. "Yes, they are. And they are very kind, wonderful dragons. You have a big family on your father's side, and they're all beautiful and strong." "What are their names?" Tosha asked eagerly. "Your grandmother's name is Dasha, and your grandfather is called Tosha," she replied. "Just like me?" Tosha's voice was filled with surprise and delight. His mother chuckled. "Yes, you were named after your grandfather." From that day on, Tosha and Loretta became inseparable. During lessons, Loretta often drifted off into daydreams, missing much of what the teacher explained. Tosha, on the other hand, didn't bother listening at all. He already knew more than most of the older students. Despite this, he refused to transfer to a higher class because staying with Loretta mattered more. Together, they shared countless secrets and the excitement of future adventures. Helping her with homework became one of his favorite things, and Loretta enjoyed it, too. Tosha explained lessons more clearly and quickly than any teacher could. He eagerly awaited the moments when Loretta would ask for his help. Because of their academic success and their easygoing nature, both became well-liked in their class. Many wanted to befriend them, but no one could match the depth of the bond they shared. They were often seen walking through the hallways, quietly talking, sharing smiles and inside jokes. This closeness sparked envy in some of the other kids, who mistook their bond for arrogance. The most envious classmates began teasing them, hoping to humiliate or upset them. "Hey, lovebirds! Have you kissed yet?" they taunted. "Four eyes. Redhead. Can you even see over the desk, Shorty? Look at these doves, cooing away." The bullies continued, trying to embarrass Tosha and Loretta. But the whispers and taunts bounced off them like pebbles against a wall. What they shared went far deeper than anyone could understand, a secret that made them stronger together. Verbal teasing became part of their routine, but Loretta and Tosha simply exchanged knowing glances and carried on. Their friendship was unshakable, far beyond the reach of petty insults. One day, however, the teasing escalated. After class, as Tosha bent down to pick up his books, a heavy boot kicked them, sending them skittering across the hallway. Laughter echoed behind him. "Oops, didn't see you there, Shorty," sneered the biggest boy, stepping closer with his friends in tow. Tosha slowly stood, brushing the hair out of his eyes, trying not to show the hurt or fear. They were bigger, stronger, and outnumbered him. But Loretta, standing beside him, felt anger boiling inside her. Before Tosha could react, she grabbed his hand, and suddenly the world around them froze. The sounds of footsteps and laughter vanished. Time itself seemed to stop, except for the two of them. Tosha looked around in amazement. The miracle had happened again. "What? How?" he whispered, his eyes wide with wonder. Loretta chuckled, seeing his bewilderment. "Celeste taught me this," she said calmly. "Pretty cool, right?" Tosha's heart raced as he nodded. "What do we do now?" "Now," Loretta said, her voice growing serious, "we teach them a lesson they won't forget. They've crossed the line. Don't be afraid. You're going to make him pick up your books, and I'll help."
I want to give the bullies a scare. With 8 long legs, I'll stand and stare. Let's see how fast they start to run when they see a giant spiders come. But no, I think I need something new, something to chase them through and through. A tiger. No, a wild boar. Or maybe a scorpion to scare them more. No, I'll be a bit smarter still. I've got a sneaky plan to thrill. I'll coil up like a snake, sly and small, in Tosha's pocket, not seen at all. When they cry, a snake, and run away, the teacher will see nothing to say. They'll be caught in their lie, and then, without fuss, maybe at last, they'll stop bullying us.
"Don't be scared, it's just me. I just couldn't come to a decision about who I wanted to become," the snake hissed, coiling itself up inside his pocket. Tosha stood frozen, his eyes wide with both awe and fear. The snake's small head peeked out from his pocket. "Ready?" she asked. Tosha gave a slight nod, and in the next moment, the world resumed its motion around them. The bullies continued laughing mockingly, but their laughter was abruptly cut short. They froze in place, eyes wide with shock, as if hypnotized by the sight of the angry, hissing snake slithering out of Tosha's pocket. Tosha stepped forward, closing the distance between himself and the bully who had kicked his books. In a low, steady voice, with an edge of menace, he said, "You'd better pick up my books, or my pet will help you." The bully's face drained of color, his eyes fixed on the snake, which lunged forward with a menacing hiss. His friends scattered in a panic, running off without a second glance. The bully made a desperate move to follow, but the snake darted in front of him, blocking his escape. "You forgot something," Tosha said calmly, his voice now cold. "Pick up my books." Hands shaking, the boy quickly dropped to his knees, gathering the scattered books. His movements were frantic, driven by fear of the creature coiled nearby, ready to strike. "Put them in my bag," Tosha ordered, his voice softer but no less commanding. The snake let out a warning hiss, and the boy, trembling, clumsily shoved the books into Tosha's backpack. "Good," Tosha said, taking the bag. "Now listen. You or your friends bother me again, and I'll introduce you to my other pets. I have a tarantula, a scorpion, and a few other creatures. They love hanging out in my pockets." He paused, leaning in slightly, his tone darkening. "Do we have an understanding?" The boy, wide-eyed and pale, nodded vigorously. "I didn't hear you," Tosha said, his voice firm, almost teacher-like. "Yes. Deal," the boy stammered, barely able to speak. "All right. You can go," Tosha said with a faint smile. He glanced at the snake and added, "Make sure he remembers his promise." The snake bobbed its head and slithered toward the bully, who backed away, stumbling over his own feet as he moved toward the door, shaking with fear. As soon as he was out of sight, Loretta transformed back into her human form, bursting into laughter. Tosha joined in, the tension melting away as they headed toward the school bus. Just before they reached it, the school secretary appeared, her expression serious. "The principal wants to see you both," she said. Tosha frowned. "But we'll miss the bus." "Don't worry. I've already called your mother. She's on her way to pick you up." In the principal's office, the same bully stood trembling. As soon as he saw Tosha, he recoiled, pressing himself against the wall, and shouted, "He has a trained snake in his pocket." "Tosha, what's in your pockets?" the principal asked, raising an eyebrow. "Nothing," Tosha calmly replied, turning out both of his pockets to reveal they were empty. At that moment, Tosha's mother burst into the principal's office, her voice full of concern. "What happened to my son?" she exclaimed, her eyes scanning him for any sign of harm. But seeing Tosha safe, her tone softened, and she asked quietly, "What's going on here?" "I must apologize," the principal began, clearly embarrassed. "We received a report that Tosha had brought a poisonous snake to school. You understand, for safety reasons, I had to investigate." "A snake? Really? That's ridiculous." Tosha's mother replied, her irritation evident. "Can I take my son home now?" "Yes, of course." "I'm terribly sorry for the misunderstanding," the principal said, shifting awkwardly. As they left the school and headed toward the parking lot, Tosha's mom shot him a stern look. "So, what's this really about?" she asked, her voice a mix of concern and curiosity. "Mom, a group of boys has been picking on us," Tosha began, choosing his words carefully. "We ignored them, but that just made them angrier. Today, one of them kicked my backpack, and well." He trailed off, uncertain how to finish. Loretta, always quick to defend her friend, jumped in. "And I decided to teach them a lesson," she said boldly, a mischievous glint in her eye. Tosha's mother raised an amused eyebrow, glancing at them both. "Looks like you two have each other's backs," she remarked playfully, though a hint of seriousness lingered in her tone. Then, with a knowing smirk, she addressed Celeste. "Celeste, this wouldn't happen to be your doing, would it?" "Yes," Celeste responded simply. Tosha's mother laughed and shook her head, leading them to the car. The next day, the boys, still angry at Tosha, decided to target Loretta. After the final gym class, they cornered her by her locker in the changing room. "Do you have a snake in your pocket too?" sneered the same bully from the day before, his eyes glinting with malice. "Do you want to find out?" Loretta replied, her voice low and threatening, her gaze unflinching. The boys hesitated, caught off guard by her confidence. "She's got nothing," the bully said, trying to shake off the unease. "Come on. Lock her in here. Quickly." The group moved swiftly, grabbing Loretta and shoving her into the narrow confines of her locker. They slammed the door shut, locking it securely before running off, laughing nervously as they fled. The bullies had no idea that their prank wouldn't scare Loretta at all. Didn't Loretta's behavior seem strange to you? What would you have done in her place? Climbed out of the locker in the form of a mouse and gone home? Scared them by turning into a terrifying monster? Complained to the teacher about them? Now listen to what Loretta actually did. Loretta walked across the schoolyard, a large cardboard box in her hands, her eyes scanning the ground. A part of her knew what she was about to do was wrong, but the urge to make the bullies pay gnawed at her. After everything they had put her and Tosha through, didn't they deserve it? She paused, staring down at the ground, her thoughts swirling. "They shouldn't have messed with us," she thought with irritation, her grip tightening on the box. But even as she said it, a flicker of doubt sparked in her mind. Would this make her just like them? What would Tosha think if he saw her now? "There you are," she muttered under her breath, stopping beside an anthill. She crouched beside an anthill, her gaze fixed on the small creatures motionless in frozen time. Her hand hovered over the anthill. Anger simmered inside her, but a small voice of reason whispered, "This isn't you, Loretta. You don't need to do this." The memory of the bullies' laughter tugged at her, their mocking sneers and how they locked her in the locker. Worse still, how they made Tosha feel small and afraid. And another voice, darker and more seductive, crept into her thoughts. "Why shouldn't they feel the same helplessness they made you feel?" It whispered. "You have the power. Use it." She squeezed her eyes shut, the weight of the decision pressing down on her. "They'll learn their lesson, and then maybe they'll leave us alone," she told herself. Loretta scooped a portion of the anthill into the box. The ants, frozen in time, remained motionless, but she knew once time resumed, they would act swiftly. She would make sure of that. Standing up, she walked toward the entrance where the bullies stood, their faces still frozen in gleeful arrogance. She approached them with deliberate steps, her heart pounding not just from the excitement of revenge, but from the thrill of the power she now wielded. She could feel it coursing through her, intoxicating and dangerous. Her hand shook slightly as she opened the box. Is this really the right thing to do? The question flitted through her mind again, but she pushed it away, her grip tightening on the edge of the box. "I don't have a snake in my pocket," she whispered softly, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and anticipation, "but I have something else." One by one, she began dumping the ants into their clothes, down their pants, behind their shirts, into their pockets. With every handful of ants, the darkness inside her seemed to grow, spreading through her like a shadow. The small voice of doubt grew quieter, while the voice urging her to go further grew louder. As she stood back, surveying her work, Loretta felt a strange sense of satisfaction wash over her. This was more than just revenge, it was control. It was power. And it felt right. She could see the scene play out in her mind already, the ants biting, the bullies squirming and screaming in panic, and the fear in their eyes as they realized they had crossed the wrong person. But as that dark satisfaction filled her, guilt lingered at the edges of her thoughts, nagging at her. She tried to shake it off, telling herself that they deserved it, but the unease wouldn't fully leave her. With one last glance at the frozen bullies, she turned and walked back to the gym locker room. Passing Tosha, still frozen in time, Loretta felt a pang of guilt twist in her chest. Would he understand? Or would he be disappointed in her? She slipped back into her locker, closing the door behind her and retreating into the darkness. The boys emerged from the school building, still laughing, but their laughter quickly turned into confusion. They started wriggling and scratching, then shouting in shock and pain as the ants, now freed from the frozen time, began biting them. Their yelps and frantic movements caught the attention of the other students and teachers nearby. The children gathered, watching with wide eyes as the bullies screamed and slapped at their clothes. "Serves you right," someone shouted from the crowd, while others giggled or watched in fascination. Even the teachers seemed exasperated by the scene, shaking their heads in disapproval. The school nurse hurried over, scolding the boys. "What were you thinking, messing with an ant-hill? Now look at you." But the bullies weren't listening. All they cared about was the biting pain crawling all over their bodies. Meanwhile, Tosha approached the gym teacher, his face serious. Loretta didn't come out of the locker room after class. She didn't show up for the bus, either. "I can't find her anywhere," he said, his voice tense. "Do you know where she is?" The teacher immediately walked into the building. Entering the girls' locker room, he called out, "Loretta." "I'm here," came a muffled voice from one of the lockers. The teacher opened it to find Loretta, her face tear-streaked. The bullies were suspended from school for an entire week. They spent those days at home, itching and suffering from the ant bites. But Loretta didn't care. In fact, thinking about their misery made her feel good, powerful. They deserved it, she thought. And next time, if they dared mess with her or Tosha again, she knew she could push things even further. She was no longer the innocent little girl who would take teasing lightly. Now, she had the power to make people regret underestimating her. And deep down, she liked it. Loretta sat in her room, trying to focus on her homework, but her mind wandered, her pencil tapping against the paper in a restless rhythm. Suddenly, the familiar shimmering tennis ball, like a phantom from her dreams, appeared at the tips of her fingers. She froze, her breath catching in her throat as the glow filled her vision. "Loretta," Celeste's soft, comforting voice broke the silence, but this time, there was something different in his tone, something final. "I must leave you." Loretta stared at the glowing ball, her heart pounding in her chest. A swirl of emotions surged inside her, sadness, yes, but something else, something she wasn't ready to admit to herself. She felt a strange, dark thrill at the thought of being left on her own, untethered from Celeste's watchful eye. "I've completed my mission," Celeste continued gently. "I found Grenadar, delivered Vitalyara's message, and watched over you and Tosha until his return. Grenadar is back now, and my task is done. Vitalyara is waiting for me." Tears welled up in Loretta's eyes, but they weren't just from the sorrow of saying goodbye. Beneath the surface, something stirred, an unfamiliar feeling that had been growing ever since she began to use her powers more freely. Without Celeste, she would be on her own. She could do things her way now. "And I'll never see or hear you again?" Loretta asked, her voice thick with emotion. But behind the tears, there was a flicker of something darker, a craving for the freedom that came with Celeste's departure. A chance to wield the power on her terms. "I don't know," Celeste replied, full of compassion. "Time will tell. But, Loretta, remember this, I've given you an extraordinary gift, something no human on earth possesses. You're a special girl, with a kind heart, and I trust you'll use your powers wisely. Promise me that you'll always use them for good." Loretta nodded automatically, but the words, "use them for good," echoed hollowly in her mind. Could she? After everything? The power she felt wasn't just something to protect others with, it was something to wield, something that made her feel stronger, more in control. She had already tasted the satisfaction of using it to put the bullies in their place, and part of her wanted more. As the glowing ball hovered in front of her, Loretta's emotions churned. The sadness of losing Celeste, her guide and protector, was real, but so was the thrill of independence. With Celeste gone, she would no longer have anyone to tell her how to use her abilities, no voice whispering caution in her ear. The freedom was intoxicating. The ball, her silent companion, slowly lifted off her fingers, rising gracefully to the ceiling. It circled the room like a tiny star, leaving a trail of shimmering sparks that rained down over her. Loretta watched in a trance, her feelings of loss mixing with excitement, like two opposing currents pulling her in different directions. As the ball spun around her once more, it disappeared into the air, leaving only the faint glow of stardust in its wake. The room suddenly felt emptier, quieter. Celeste was gone. But instead of feeling lonely, Loretta was filled with a strange confidence. The absence of Celeste left a void, but that void was quickly filled by the thrill of what she could now do on her own. She stood still in the silence, her innocent tears drying on her cheeks, as something new took root in her heart. A quiet, subtle shift. The loss was there, but so was the power. And as Loretta stared at the empty space where the ball had once been, she knew she wasn't the same girl who had first met Celeste. Something had changed. The power wasn't just a gift anymore, it was hers, fully hers, and she wasn't sure she ever wanted to let go of it. The question wasn't if she would use it, it was how. At that same moment, across town, Tosha and his mother stepped into their home. "Dad! Dad's back!" Tosha shouted, his face lighting up with joy. "I've been waiting for you for so long." Without hesitation, Tosha rushed into Grinadar's arms. The massive figure of his father knelt to embrace him, and the weight of Tosha's weight disappeared in an instant. "I missed you too, son," Grinadar said warmly, his deep voice filled with love. "Dad, will you tell me?" Tosha began, his words overflowing with excitement. Grinadar smiled, lifting his son easily with one arm while pulling his wife close with the other. "Of course, Tosha," he replied. "I'll tell you everything, show you the world, and teach you everything you need to know." He looked lovingly into his son's eager eyes. "Hello, my dear," he whispered to his wife as she smiled back, the family finally complete again. "Now, do you want to know what happened next?" "Of course, you do." "Well then, listen closely." Grinadar and Tosha settled on the warm rug in front of the fireplace, unaware of time passing as they talked and laughed. Tosha, with wide eyes, recounted all the adventures he and Loretta had been through while Grinadar was gone, and his father smiled, occasionally ruffling Tosha's curly hair. "Dad, Mom promised that when you got back, we'd go on a real spaceship ride," Tosha said excitedly. Grinadar chuckled, shaking his head. "Son, you don't need a spaceship to travel in space," he said gently. "You're a dragon, just like me, you just don't know it yet." Tosha's eyes widened even further. "But I don't have wings," he protested, looking at his small frame. Grinadar's eyes twinkled with amusement. "Neither do I, until I need them," he replied. "But when I want to fly, they appear. It's the same for you." "How?" Tosha asked, his voice full of awe and disbelief. Grinadar stood up slowly, his large frame casting a shadow across the room. "Let's go for a flight together," he suggested, his voice filled with quiet promise. "It's nighttime now. Everyone is asleep, and no one will see us." "But I don't know how to fly," Tosha said, a little uncertain. Grinadar placed a reassuring hand on his son's shoulder. "You will, son," he said, his voice steady and calm. "But be careful, before you take off, you'll grow in size. You'll be much bigger than our house, so you need to move slowly. You don't want to wake your mom or knock anything over, do you? Tosha blinked, staring up at his father, unable to believe what he was hearing. He could hardly process the thought of becoming as large as a house, let alone flying into space. But something in his father's voice calmed him, made him feel as though this incredible transformation was completely natural. Understood? Grenadar asked. Tosha nodded, still speechless, but his heart was racing with excitement and curiosity. This was it, the beginning of something greater than he'd ever imagined. Father and son stepped into the yard, the cool night air wrapping around them. Grenadar looked up at the sky, filled with billions of stars twinkling like distant jewels. Look how beautiful it is, Grenadar whispered, his voice reverent. This magical world was built by your grandmother and grandfather, and I protect it. Tosha followed his father's gaze, the vastness of the sky making his heart race. He could feel something stirring inside him, a strange pull, like the stars were calling to him. As he stared up at the endless expanse, a wave of unfamiliar energy surged through him. It was exhilarating and terrifying at the same time. See that star? Grenadar pointed to a twinkling light in the distance. That's where my sister Vishialara is. She's sending us a signal, showing us where she is. If you ever get lost, fly to that blinking star. Vishialara will help you. In space, there is neither time nor distance. Once you leave Earth, you'll feel it. So stay close to me, or you'll drift too far. Tosha nodded, but his mind was barely processing the words. His heart was pounding in his chest, his thoughts swirling. Fly? Drift too far? How was he supposed to fly? Then Grenadar turned to him, his eyes filled with pride. Well, son, I see you're ready for your first flight. Tosha blinked in confusion. He was ready? How? He felt small standing beside his towering father. The idea of flying seemed impossible. But as he looked around, he realized something strange, something incredible had happened. He wasn't small anymore. His breath caught in his throat as he stared down at himself. His body had grown, much bigger than the house. His skin wasn't skin anymore, it was covered in fiery red scales that shimmered under the starlight. He reached up, almost in disbelief, and felt the smooth, warm surface of the scales on his chest. I'm a dragon, he whispered, his voice trembling with awe. Fear crept in, mixing with the excitement coursing through him. He had dreamed of this moment, imagined what it would be like, but nothing could have prepared him for the reality of it. The sheer size of his new body, the strength he could feel rippling through his limbs, it was overwhelming. But along with the fear, there was something else. Something deeper. A feeling of rightness, of belonging, like this was what he was always meant to be. He glanced at his father, who had already spread his massive wings and was hovering effortlessly in the air, waiting for him. Grenadar's silver scales reflected the moonlight, making him look like a living constellation. You've always had this power, Grenadar said, his voice filled with warmth. You just didn't know it yet. Now, spread your wings, son. Let the wind carry you. Tosha hesitated for a moment, his heart pounding in his chest. Could he really do this? He glanced back at his wings, massive, powerful, and unfamiliar. But they felt natural. As if they had always been there, waiting for the moment they were needed. Taking a deep breath, Tosha spread his wings. The motion was instinctive, as though his body knew exactly what to do even if his mind was still catching up. He felt the wind catch under them, lifting him slightly off the ground. A jolt of fear shot through him as his feet left the earth, but it was quickly replaced by exhilaration. The wind was beneath him, holding him up, and with every beat of his wings, he rose higher. I'm flying, Tosha thought, his heart soaring. I'm really flying.
As a dragon, I soar through the sky, higher than flocks of swans can fly. The depths of space are mine to claim, flipping through stars in a daring game. I grab a comet's tail in flight, as it streaks past in silver light. Meteor trails flash as I sweep, juggling stars with tail and feet. Oh, what fun, to twist and spin, kicking up stardust in a whirl of wind, dancing in vast and boundless space, flying through galaxies at my own pace, laughing out loud, with a fiery shout, not a worry or hint of doubt, and no fear below, as I roam, of waking my mother back home.
Grenadar chuckled, his wings beating rhythmically as he glided beside his son. There's a whole universe out there, Tosha. And this is just the beginning. The two dragons soared higher into the night, like two fiery comets streaking through the night. Grenadar's heart swelled with pride. Grandma Dasha will be so excited to meet Tosha that she might twist her tail into a knot from pure joy, Grenadar thought, a grin spreading across his face. And Grandpa Tosha, well, he'll probably end up with another dent in his tail after bumping into a meteor, as usual. And Vishialara, she'll be flying circles around him, proud of her nephew whom she half-created herself. It's a miracle. Look down at the earth, son. What do you see? Tosha turned his head, and for the first time, truly saw the earth from above, a glowing blue and green sphere, slowly turning beneath them. He marveled at its beauty and said, "Now I understand, Dad, why you were always so serious about teaching me astronomy. I can see the morning light spreading across the earth. It's time for us to return. If we don't, Mom will wake up and wonder where we've gone." Grenadar smiled warmly at his son, the resemblance between them undeniable despite their different colors. "Yes, let's head back. Your mother will be looking for us soon." Together, they descended through the sky, a father and son, two dragons united by a shared legacy, their bond as strong as the stars above. Tosha couldn't wait for the school bus to stop at Loretta's stop. As soon as she sat next to him, he began chattering excitedly, sharing his latest adventure, his exhilarating flight into space with his father. His words tumbled out in a rush, but then, out of the corner of his eye, he noticed Loretta seemed distant, her usual spark dimmed. "Loretta, what's wrong?" he asked, interrupting his own story with concern. "Celeste left," she replied quietly. "He said Vishialara is waiting for him." Tosha's eyes widened. "So, does that mean you're just a regular girl now? You can't do any magic anymore?" "No," Loretta answered with a faint smile, and without warning, she stuck out her tongue. It split in two like a snake's, quickly darting out to lick the tip of Tosha's nose. "You scared me," Tosha yelped, laughing in surprise. Loretta joined in, her laughter echoing through the bus. But as their laughter faded, Tosha's expression grew thoughtful. "Oh, I wanted to ask you something," he said, his tone softening. "Why didn't you come out of the locker yesterday when those boys locked you in? You could have easily gotten out." Loretta's eyes gleamed, but there was a coolness behind them. "If I'd just come out, they wouldn't have been punished. I knew you'd come looking for me, probably with the teacher. This way, they learned their lesson." Tosha frowned slightly, absorbing her words. "Yeah, I guess that's true." His voice trailed off as he glanced out the window, processing what she'd said. After a moment, he looked back at her, his tone more subdued. "Did you hear those boys got into an anthill?" "Yeah, I heard," Loretta replied nonchalantly. "Serves them right." Tosha shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "I felt sorry for them," he admitted quietly. "The ants bit them so badly. One of them even started choking. They barely saved him." Loretta looked at Tosha, her face devoid of emotion. She shrugged indifferently, and said nothing. "So, do you want to fly into space with me?" Tosha asked with a playful glint in his eyes. "Of course. But how?" I'm not a dragon, Loretta teased, raising an eyebrow. Tosha grinned. Oh, come on. You can transform into a dragon, can't you? Oh yeah. Loretta giggled. That night, Loretta couldn't sleep. Her mind buzzed with excitement and anticipation. She lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, waiting. Suddenly, there was a soft tap at her window. Her heart leaped. She sprang from bed, quietly opened the window, and slipped outside. So, are we flying? Tosha whispered, already waiting for her, his eyes gleaming in the moonlight. Yes, Loretta whispered back. But I've decided not to turn into a dragon just yet. You can carry me, she added with a mischievous grin. Of course, Tosha replied without hesitation, his voice brimming with excitement. Loretta held her breath as Tosha suddenly grew larger and larger until he towered over the ground, a fiery dragon as big as a mountain. His scales shimmered like embers, and the ground beneath them seemed to hum with his energy. With a careful, gentle motion, he scooped her up in his enormous paw, cradling her before placing her securely on his back. Hold on tight, he whispered, his deep voice vibrating through the night air. Loretta wrapped her arms around his neck, feeling the heat of his scales beneath her hands. And then, with a powerful beat of his wings, they soared into the sky. The world below shrank away as they flew higher and higher, disappearing into the clouds, the stars twinkling like a distant dream above them. Today my tale has come to an end. But this is far from the end of the story. The story of Tosha and Loretta has only just begun. What do you think? Will they remain friends or become enemies? Will they live on Earth or in space? Or maybe they'll settle on a completely different planet or moon. Tell me about your fantasies, dreams, and wishes. Until we meet again, my friend. Far beyond planets, past stars in the night, in worlds wrapped in darkness, yet kissed by starlight, ancient tales are born and grow, with secrets only dragons know. Stories bloom in cosmic night, of dark and light, of wrong and right, of love and friendship, brave and bright, of magic strong and shadowed might. One starry visitor came to find a dragon guardian, strong and kind. He found a boy who had no clue. His dragon blood was pure and true. He asked a girl to lend her hand, and gifted her magic, fierce and grand. But with her might, her heart grew cold, she craved her power, strong and bold. A boy with strength, a girl with might, together they met in starlit light. They shared a friendship deep and rare, but shadows whispered everywhere. With dragon strength and magic's glow, what's next, my friends? Who's to know? Will shadows win or light shine bright? Will trust survive through day and night? Each star above has secrets deep, of dreams it hides and hopes it keeps, and every poet, young and free, can spin a tale. What could it be? For some may find as they explore, these tales are magic, forevermore.